My original partner in this business used to say that he slept like a baby. He slept half the night and cried half the night. And I think that that's just a great way to say it. You don't control your fate in this business, whether it be a government permit that goes off schedule, that you thought you were going to get it in September and you don't get it until January, so you can't start and you miss the weather. It's just full of risks that seem to come out of nowhere. So it's an unsettling business, but I believe that the reward is worth it.
Could you tell us about your first deal? That was a lot of units ago, I know.
The first deal that I did on my own without working for someone was a 306 unit apartment complex in Fort Lauderdale, Florida.
Oh my goodness.
But there were no apartments down here then. That was like in 1987, and it just did just great.
I know you said economies of scale, but 300 units is a lot. Walk me through a bit more, though. I mean, how did you get the financing for 300 units as your first? I mean, I know you have equity partners, but...
Well, financing back then was a little like it was before this last recession. So it was very easy to get financing on product that was market ready and there was a great need for. I'm not sure that, in my experience, the size of the project matters as much as the numbers of the project, and the design of the project. The economies of scale they're just the same. Actually, small projects can be far worse. If you think about an apartment complex that, let's say that it had 20 buildings, it's really just 20 small projects, right? So we built that in 2 phases. We could have stopped after the first phase, but we leased 10 or 15 units a month. As soon as they were done, they were full. I think a high rise is extremely risky because once you're going, you have to finish.
Yeah, it's a big hole in the ground.
Yeah, so when you're building multifamily, even my 360 unit townhome project, you build one building at a time, and we always sold them before we built them. So there was always a pre-sale. Spec building, I don't endorse for anybody. I think it's just the worst thing that you can do. You don't have any feel, even with your market analysis, for the tastes of your consumer. And so you can't change gears. So what happens with a lot of spec homes, or so I've seen over the years, is you've got a client who comes in and says, I love this home, but I want you to rip out what you did in the kitchen. I want you to redo this. I want that wall gone. And all of a sudden you're rebuilding something. So, a model home or 2 or 3 is fine, but I think you really need to evaluate the risk of the market before you go on a spec program. And so once you know that that product is tried and true, and I built a lot of townhomes in that 4,000 units, and they were very, very well proven, I felt less vulnerable to the size of the project.
How now, I know you built 4,000 homes is what the RHA side says. You did lots of single family, and then you said you did 4 stories and below, and then you had a high rise. Was it a progression, or what were the chapters, I should say, in the development of the company and your entrepreneurial experience?
The chapters are really easy to define, and they kind of went with market. So we started the company in South Florida and built about 2,000 apartment units. So we were apartment developers, and I loved apartments because they were easy to build. They were the same units pretty much, with maybe a change of carpet or countertop color. And where markets were good, it was easy to build, it was repetition, and you could control it. When the market crashed down here in the 80s, we went back to Chicago. I had a lot of friends there and started looking for land. So we operated both out of a Florida office and a Chicago office, and we began building apartments there on the North Shore of Chicago. When interest rates started to fall in the early 90s, we sold our apartment product and started building for sale housing. And the first line of product, which ended up to be really the mainstay of my company, were townhomes, usually only 200 units and above. The largest townhome project I think we built was 360 units. The economies of scale when you get big really make a difference. And if we weren't able to self-perform and build and figure out how to build really every kind of idiom of housing, we weren't going to be able to compete or keep our numbers together to keep the company going. So that's when we made a conscious decision to really make sure that our product line was fully diversified, and it was, and it gave us great volume. And I would say that had I continued on in the business, we would have cycled back into apartments. In fact, we were looking for apartment land at that time because that's where it was going. And I think you've seen the numbers on apartment complexes.
Yes, I have.
Cap rates are phenomenal right now. So I think, the conscious decision or the chapters of what you build, you need to be flexible and work within the marketplace.
When I was thinking about development, I have the desire to, save costs in one area so that I can devote more money to building a higher quality product in another area. And of course, where is that area that you're going to cut the costs? And I remember you saying that there are lots of ways other than just saying, well, here's a plan, general contractor, go build this for us. There are lots of different micro steps between totally vertical integrating, build yourself, you are the GC, versus just handing it off to a GC. Could you talk about some of those steps in between and your experiences with the different ones, which ones you like the most?
We started with the entitlement of our own land, the acquisition of our own land, engaging a market analyst to find out what the best use for that land would be, and then working through the governmental process in doing that. And then we pretty much self-performed in a construction management mode. I think that's what you're relating to for all of our 4-story and below product. So we were very comfortable in that mode. And so we were able to act as a construction manager, which meant that we were an umbrella and we managed our set of subcontractors. Sometimes we'd have 4 or 5 excellent relationships within each segment of our subcontractors, the electricians, the plumbers, the carpenters, the millwork, the masons. And then we go to bid, and those relationships held true for us. They were also a safety net. In addition to those financial metrics that we worked with, having a safety net of companies that you could trust and rely on to get your buildings done on time made all the sense in the world. So it was a partnership between my construction management company and the subcontractors that we worked with, some for 30 years. When we moved into developing a high-rise in downtown Chicago, we hired another construction management firm that specialized in high-rise construction because we didn't have enough knowledge about it. And then we hired a general contractor, but kept the construction manager on and my team to add layers of insulation to make sure that things were going to come in on time and on budget, but people that were smart enough to understand what they were telling.
I also remember when we talked that you said you had a set of numbers to which you were very, very devoted and would not allow yourself to make deals at any point in any kind of market cycle that broke those. Could you walk us through how you developed those numbers for yourself? Were they industry standards?
In the last 30 years, I went through 3 recessions.
Exactly.
And sticking with a really good set of metrics, which really don't change very much over the years, except they fluctuate with the cost of materials, they fluctuate with the market and what rents were or what sales prices were. Always look at your rate of return and stick to it. There were many deals that didn't hit that benchmark and walked away from it. And those are the best deals I never did. So that, coupled with good third-party market analysis, legal, engineering, architectural, really the best of the best in all of those categories, really, I think, gives you an insulation to the bad things that can go wrong. And then they can still go wrong, but your landing is a lot softer.
Do most developers rely as heavily on third-party market analysts, or would you say that was more of a trademark?
I think it was unique to our company. A lot of people hire people that are within. They don't want to spend the $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 to do that market study. And I never did a project without my analyst to really tell us the truth about what the econometrics were, what the demographics were of that particular project. And because of that, we were really well protected, and knew what we were doing, knew how to price. For example, our high rise in downtown Chicago, people said you could have gotten so much more money for those condominiums, and we sold them at a certain dollar amount per foot when everybody else was maybe $100 more per foot over, or even $50 a foot more over. But we sold it out. We closed all of our units, but a few, before the Great Recession hit in January. We were on time, on budget, and we had financing and had a building that was sold out.
When we first met, I remember very clearly you said, "Don't become a deal junkie. Don't become obsessed with the next deal and the new deal." And I know you took that advice to heart because you're doing all kinds of amazing things right now, and you're not at your company anymore. Could you talk about the decision to transition? And I'd love to hear about what you're doing now, but especially just the ability to not become a deal junkie, as you say.
Well, I think that goes back to don't fall in love with the real estate and don't fall in love with the deal and what it might do for you. Fall in love with the economics, fall in love with what it's going to do for the community. You know, being able to wrap up what I was doing was very easy to do because I was lucky enough to include philanthropy as part of our business model. And back in 2003, for 3 years, we built dream homes for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital and raised almost $3 million for the hospital. And what it did is it changed the fabric of my company. Everybody worked, all the subcontractors building homes for free, basically, for the hospital to be raffled off. And they became a part of this greater good, yet they were collaborating and sometimes would build all night these homes that we did. And it just became an incredible thing. And over the years, I did a lot with St. Jude, and eventually I was given an invitation to sit on their board of directors, their national board of directors, and I'm chairing their building committee right now. And we just completed a $150 million brand new global education center and proton beam therapy building, and we're off and working on a strategic plan for the next 7 years to expand the campus by over $1 billion in new construction. So I'm chairing that right now. And it's a great thing to do because I'm able to use my knowledge from the industry to work kind of in the same way that I did with my company. I get a lot of gratification from it. It's really the best work I've ever done. Being a deal junkie can really send you under because I think you can only control what you can control. If your focus is on getting huge and big and getting ready to sell to the next public company, you might miss your timing. You know, it's been successful for people. They've done it. It does happen, but it's not an easy task, and you have to be very, very careful, and you need to be very, very comfortable in the pocketbook to be able to take a risk like that. So I think that's what I meant. I know a lot of people who were deal junkies, and they got stuck with an awful lot of bad product that they had to liquidate and get rid of, and it can become very, not only expensive, but stressful.